In this video, we will explore the development of the theology of death and the afterlife in Jewish thought. In the Tanakh, or Hebrew Bible, there are numerous references to death, Sheol, and the resurrection of the dead. Jewish sages and rabbis devoted considerable time and effort to exploring the meanings of these concepts. Their discussions on these topics are found in texts sacred to the Jewish people, such as the Talmud and the Mishnah. One of the earliest references to death and the afterlife is found in Genesis, when Jacob receives news of the alleged death of his son, Joseph. Jacob proclaims, "I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Genesis 37:35. Another reference to Sheol is found in Numbers 16, where the sons of Korah usurp the priesthood and are swallowed up alive by the earth into Sheol. Whether they are alive or dead in Sheol remains a matter of debate in rabbinical circles. The Torah does not provide further detail on what Sheol entails. Other scriptures reference Sheol in association with death, as seen in the Psalms, or in relation to the underworld, as seen in the books of the prophets, such as Samuel and Ezekiel. The mysterious nature of Sheol is further highlighted by Jonah's reference to it in his prayer while in the belly of the great fish, saying, "Out of the belly of Sheol I cried for help, and you heard my voice." Jonah 2:1. In biblical texts, Sheol appears to be a place where the dead dwell, whether as righteous as Jacob or as sinful as the sons of Korah. Difficult experiences, such as Jonah's ordeal in the belly of the great fish or David's suffering surrounded by enemies, are sometimes rhetorically compared with Sheol. However, extra-biblical Jewish texts offer a different perspective. For example, the Zohar, a foundational work of Kabbalistic literature or Jewish mystical thought, teaches that Sheol is one of the stories of Gehinnom, the place of sinners in the afterlife. As the text of the Zohar puts it, we have learnt that the sinners of Gehinnom are in different stories, and that Gehinnom has a number of gates corresponding to those of the Garden of Eden, each with its own name. There is one story lower than all the rest, which consists of a story on a story, and this is called the Nether Sheol, Sheol, being one story and Nether another below it. Furthermore, Bimidbar Rabbah, an 11th or 12th century midrash on the Book of Numbers, contrasts the righteous dwelling in good pastures being fed by God, Ezekiel 34:14, while the wicked descend to Sheol, where they are covered with darkness, Genesis 1:2, Psalms 36:7. It appears that the Jewish conception of Sheol shifts from being initially the place where all dead souls dwell, regardless of their moral conduct, to a place reserved for those who die in wickedness. While the aforementioned views are the most widespread, they certainly do not reflect the full spectrum of biblical or Jewish thought on the subject. For example, the author of Ecclesiastes, in his typical melancholic manner, writes the following about the death of humans and animals. "For the fate of the sons of men and the fate of beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beasts. For all is vanity. All go to one place, all are from the dust, and all turn to dust again. Who knows whether the spirit of man goes upward, and the spirit of the beast goes down to the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should enjoy his work, for that is his lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him?" Ecclesiastes 3:19-22. The attitude of the text reflects either an apophatic approach, where what lies after death is utterly unknown, or a view resembling that of Epicurus, whose materialist worldview led him to deny the soul's survival after death or the possibility of reward and punishment. Nevertheless, this biblical perspective opened the door to numerous schools of thought within Judaism regarding the questions of death and the afterlife. During Second Temple Judaism, for example, one finds that the Pharisees, strict adherents to the law of Moses, were mostly believers in an afterlife and a messianic age in which peace will prevail and the dead will rise. Along similar lines, though with a significantly more apocalyptic focus, were the Essenes, an apocalyptic Jewish group that lived on the outskirts of Jewish society in the desert, focusing on esoteric practices and purifying rites in preparation for the coming Messiah. On the opposite side of the spectrum were the Sadducees, who did not believe in an afterlife or in the existence of angels. For the Sadducees, death marked the end of one's life, with no prospects for reward or punishment. The destruction of the temple in Jerusalem marked the end of the Sadducee and Essene sects of Judaism, while the Pharisees continued, though dispersed across the diaspora. Nevertheless, the diversity on Jewish perspectives on death and the afterlife continued in Jewish thought up to the present day. In subsequent periods, sages and rabbis of Judaism discussed death and the afterlife in various ways, though they never systemized their views into a consistent doctrine compulsory for all Jews to believe. Instead, various ideas, often divergent if not outright contradictory, are found. However, some common themes can be detected across the Jewish spectrum, such as references to the afterlife as Olam HaBa, or the world to come, Gehenna, or the realm of punishment after death, and Gan Eden, or the Garden of Eden, which is a euphemism for the realm of paradise for the righteous. In most Jewish writings, Gehenna is seen as a purgatorial state of punishment, after which the soul is released to Gan Eden. At the end of days, a resurrection of the dead will occur, in which all bodies will rise and be reunited with their respective souls. While other divergent views of the afterlife can be traced in Jewish literature, the aforementioned themes are common elements that have endured in Jewish conscience to the present day. In his summary of Smitcha Paul Raphael's Jewish views of the afterlife, Rabbi Barry Leff outlines the mainstream or normative Jewish view of the afterlife today as follows. Immediately following death, there is a period known as Hibit HaKever, pangs of the grave. During this period, the soul is confused, lingers around the body, and tries to go back to his home and be with his loved ones. After this, there is a maximum period of 12 months in Gehenna, which is a realm described as fiery, where the soul is purified of its sins. The custom of reciting Kaddish for one's parents for 11 months was instituted by Rabbi Moses ben Israel Isserles of Krakow in the 16th century. His rationale was that since 12 months in Gehenna was the maximum punishment for sinners, one would not want to assume that one's dead father or mother had been allocated the maximum punishment. After being purified in Gehenna, the soul goes to Gan Eden. The perfectly righteous don't have to pass through Gehenna. The completely and unrepentant wicked are cut off and have no portion in Olam HaBa, the world to come. Gan Eden is viewed as another transitory phase. There will be a physical resurrection, after which the souls will reside in a spiritualized state of existence in the Olam HaBa. In other words, there are those who will be in the world to come in bliss without suffering through the punishments of Gehenna. The majority of people, however, will endure the suffering of Gehenna for a period of no more than 12 months. In this regard, Gehenna appears to be a purgatorial state, rather than an eternal punishment. There are, however, those who will be cut off from the world to come, whose fate seems to be utter annihilation rather than eternal punishment. In conclusion, Jewish thought on death and the afterlife is by no means monolithic. Rather, diverse speculations on the subject are widespread within the tradition. This diversity may reflect the intellectual encounter between Jewish thought and the cultures with which the Jewish people engaged, whether Babylonian, Persian, or Greek. Nevertheless, the diversity in understandings of death and the afterlife is even evident within the biblical text. Although Jews and Christians both uphold the books of the Hebrew Bible as authoritative, their views on death and the afterlife differ significantly. In a future video, we will explore Christian views on death and the afterlife, as well as points of convergence and divergence between the two traditions on this subject.